This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Welcome back. The home stretch here on Inside the Paint, and Gino Mighty's got the fix for us. Says that Jimmy's problem is that he wears cheap shoes, and that's why the ankles keep busting down on him. So that's it. I mean, we figured it out. Somebody's got to get him some Jordans, something that's not cheap. Ira, what say you?
I'm not going to talk about product quality or impugn the name of Dwayne Wade and what he's pushing, but I've always said, why doesn't he just put that logo on a different pair of sneakers and keep things going a little better, or tape his ankles or wear an ankle brace? And we kid about that. And I've mentioned it. I'm going to ask Erik Spoelstra the other day, and of course he can't answer the question. He can't say, you're darn right, Jimmy's not being smart. He has to play it down the middle. But it really is an issue when you commit to someone through his 38th birthday with a contract extension that gives him about $220 million, $250 million over 5 years. It doesn't seem like an unreasonable ask. And yet that players, if they're not in their comfort zone, won't be the same players. But that's an issue that doesn't disappear. There have been 3 separate times now we've had Jimmy Butler ankle sprain, and you can't have that a 4th time come the playoffs. Everything has to be perfect in the playoffs. There's now a chance of a new Omicron variant. You have that in play. There's Kyle Lowry's personal situation, which to a degree the family matter remains unresolved. You have that in play. You have Jimmy Butler's ongoing injuries, the toe and the ankle, whether they're shoe-related or ankle-related, that's in play. Clay, as you know, the playoffs are always which player can't make it at the end. The Chris Paul situations in recent years have been ongoing. So if the Heat are healthy and whole, they could be as competitive as anyone. But because they rely on everyone, one little thing goes off and the whole train could be a little bit off.
Caddyshack brings this up and says, look, Jimmy Butler is amazing. You don't have to worry about him flipping the switch come playoff time. He's 1 for 2. And look, that run 2 years ago was amazing, and nothing is ever going to take away from what he did in that postseason. Last year, he didn't. He had the one shot at the buzzer to send game 1 into overtime. They ended up losing. His numbers for that playoff series were horrendous, and Milwaukee found a way to slow him down and basically stop him and make him ineffective. So he's 1 for 2. He was able to flip the switch 2 years ago, didn't do it last year, and part of that was certainly the supporting cast. You're hoping that it's better this year. But Ira, when you're 1 for 2, I got to see if you can make it 2 for 3. I'm not ready to just say blanket he can flip the switch because we saw him do it one time. I need to see him do it with this group again. And look, you mentioned when you're committing to somebody who's at that age, has Father Time come? And look, I don't think it's come that quickly yet, but I need to see him be able to do it come playoff time before I can just say it's fine, nothing to worry about here, nothing to see here. There have been too many instances this year where he's come up short at the end of ball games, and I need to see him be able to do it. I'm not necessarily 100% confident that is just a switch that he personally can flip. I do think you need to see him be the leader of this team and be the catalyst for all of this because you need that alpha. But I need to see it happen before I can just say, hey, because he's done it before, I'm confident that he can do it again.
And that's the thing is teams went to school on Jimmy Butler as an elite player after 2020. It was no longer just play him straight up, guard him like you guarded him in Chicago and Minnesota and Philadelphia. They took it to the next level. And Milwaukee smothers him with size, and it's made a difference. We not only seen that last year in the playoffs, we've seen that during this season's regular season series also. And that's among the reasons they got Kyle Lowry to help change that dynamic a little bit, to get Jimmy into better spots. And it's worked to a degree, but they just haven't had the cohesion they needed as much to this point, Clay, to get to that point also. So Jimmy has to do it to a degree on his own, has to live his own level. Erik Spoelstra has to counter what Mike Budenholzer did. Mike Budenholzer found something. How does Erik Spoelstra find the counter? Maybe it's like what we spoke about today about changing the lineup, changing the dynamic. That little twist that Erik Spoelstra could throw in there that the other teams all of a sudden are game planning on the fly again. It's not Milwaukee saying, we have the lockbox. We're going to do what we did last year in the playoffs. We're going to do what we did this year in the regular season. We have to change it up. We've always heard about how Erik Spoelstra plays the chess game as well as anyone, how he's respected by opposing coaches. He's going to have to do that 4 separate times this year because This is not the Eastern Conference of recent years. This is
Mhm.
the Eastern Conference where the Heat's road to the NBA Finals could have to go through the Brooklyn Nets, the Philadelphia 76ers, or the Boston Celtics, and the Milwaukee Bucks. There's no Indiana Pacers in there anymore. There's no Charlotte Hornets in the first round there anymore. This is going to be grueling. Goes back to your point. Can you gruel with this 36-year-old starting power forward, a 35-year-old starting point guard, and a 33-year-old wing player? It's another element in the equation. This is an older team that's going to be asked to do a lot over the next 2 months if they're going to get what they think they can get.
Cedola says, I feel like y'all are talking about Bam as if he's a complimentary player. Don't you think that Bam and Tyler need to carry the load? I mean, maybe, and maybe that's where you're getting with this team. I do think, though, that when you commit to Jimmy Butler like you did, not just financially, but you also bring in his good friend Kyle Lowry and commit financially to him, you are going to have this point where there's going to be a passing of the torch. I don't think you're there yet if you want this to be a championship team. Because look, Bam, his game has grown immensely.
Mm-hmm.
He's not yet the player, I don't think, that you put the ball in his hands and let him face up from 20 feet at the end of the game and let him dictate whether or not you win the game or potentially the playoff series or lose it. I still think that Jimmy Butler still has to be that guy with this team's current window. And maybe that even changes in the playoffs. And I still think that offensively, Tyler Hero may be but the bottom line is you're going to go as far as your alpha takes you. Jimmy Butler is still the alpha on this team. And maybe there is a switch. Maybe there is a point where the torch is passed during these playoffs. I don't know that we're there yet, though.
Clay, something very interesting just happened. 50 minutes into our, Slomin's home security inside the paint show was the first time we mentioned Bam Adebayo. And isn't that interesting that we went through all the players of Tyler Hero?
Can I tell you why? Can I tell you why?
Sure.
Because we're trying to figure out what's wrong with this team. And Bam is what's right with this team right now.
Okay.
And so I think that's the issue to me. It's maybe we haven't mentioned him, and maybe that is the answer. Maybe it's the point that he is. But to me, I think you're getting everything that you need out of Bam Adebayo. It's the other guys who I think need to find a new level of their game, or at least mitigate some of the weaknesses that we've seen to this point.
And you're fine with a $168 million complimentary player?
I don't know that I think that it's what he brings that you're paying him to do. I don't know that he is complimentary. I guess where I'm bristling is the word complimentary. He's
Okay.
the fulcrum of your defense. I mean, you look at what he does defensively, and maybe he's complimentary offensively, but I'm completely fine with that because of what he does defensively. I don't think that he's the guy that you put the ball in his hands down the stretch. I think there are plenty of teams, very good teams, potentially championship teams, who pay players a lot of money to do a lot less than what he does. So I'm okay with that. I need to see more from Jimmy Butler. I need to see PJ Tucker get back to who he was a few weeks ago. Those are the guys that I need to see take another step up because I'm perfectly happy with what I'm seeing from Bam.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I go all the way there with you because I still think at moments of truth, it seems like where was Bam or where is Bam when you need him at the end also. He had his moments. I think it was the Oklahoma City game. He was okay against Detroit, but I think he has to make himself available as an option. And when they're getting killed on the boards, then if they're going to play these undersized lineups with Markieff Morris getting time at
and
power
that part
forward,
I'm okay with. I'm perfectly fine with criticizing the rebounding the other night.
Absolutely. I think the aggression can't wane also. Again, he missed those 7 weeks, so he should be relatively fresh right now. He's had that time off also, but I think he's a big part of the equation also. And again, he didn't play Joel Embiid on Monday, so we didn't see that matchup. We don't get a read on that. And he does move the ball, and he does facilitate and make other players better. But yeah, I think you can ask a little bit more when you've sort of increased his pay grade and put him there. Because again, Clay, you're reaching a point where you have Bam at a maximum contract, maximum rookie scale extension, Jimmy Butler at $250 million almost, Kyle Lowry at almost $30 million a season. And now you have this offseason decision of a Tyler Hero extension or a new contract for Victor Oladipo if he proves to be a player. At a certain point, if you're going to max out 5 players on your team, you damn well better be a championship team. Yes. That's why you had that debate in Boston when you were to give Marcus Smart that money. And you had Jaylen Brown, you had Jason Tatum, and they continually underachieved under Brad Stevens until you made the coaching change. I think it's the same thing with the Heat. Yay, you're number one seed. You remember that Atlanta Hawks team that was number one seed with Jeff Teague and Al Horford and Kyle Korver and I think it was Damari Carroll and who cares? And then they got blown out in the conference finals by the Cavaliers. If that's this Heat team's upside, it is not good enough. And free agency will have to get interesting again. If that's not who this team is, then everyone has to show in the playoffs. And there has to be greatness not only from Jimmy and Kyle and maybe Duncan, but also from Bam Adebayo. So, yeah, I think we need to go fewer than 50 minutes in next week's Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint when we talk about Bam Adebayo, because if Bam is not a Miami Heat talking point, then I think you should have concerns.
Man of 1,005 Holds says that the thing that makes this team dynamic is you have a bunch of guys who can close, not just one. I would counter that by saying you don't have one that you are 100% confident in. And it's like the old saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one.
Right.
If you're having to figure out like who your best late game option is, you probably don't have the guy. Like Brooklyn's a different story because you have two guys who on any other team, they would be the unquestioned number one, right? Like Kyrie Irving, I mean, you saw him do it against Golden State in the finals. He's still got that ability. Like you put him on any other team, even on a team with LeBron in the NBA finals, Kyrie was the one making the big shot down the stretch in Game 7. And Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. Milwaukee, Giannis can get to the basket. Drew Holiday's you have a bunch of, put it this way.
I'm going to interrupt for a second. I'm going to give you a tough question here, but end of the game, high score, down one, however you want to put it. Who would you rather have the ball in their hands? And this is going to seem like blasphemy, Heat fans, and this is not the Wednesday Downer show. We're just trying to sort of show you things. Who would you rather have the ball in their hands? Okay, end of the game, tie game, 1-point game. Jimmy Butler or Chris Middleton?
It's Middleton. It's Middleton. It's
Think about that.
Okay, I'm going to take it a step further. Jimmy Butler or Drew Holiday? I'm going Drew Holiday.
I think Chris Middleton, though, because he's more of a pure shooter, that if he gets to a spot, you feel very good about the shot. Drew Holiday is more of a player, might get to the basket, might get to the free throw line, might make the shot. I think Chris Middleton's more money. The Heat don't have that money ball player, although they did for stretches in this month in late February in Tyler Hero, which is why maybe he's the Heat's version of Chris Middleton. That's why these final 10 games are not essential. The number one seed is not essential. But if you can lift our confidence level back a little bit more, I think it would be a really good thing for the Heat. Yes, they've won the bulk of their games. They're coming off a 5-2 homestand. Yes, it's just one loss against Philadelphia. But man, when I come on with Big O on Friday on the Acura Pembroke Pines Report, I don't want to be talking about a loss to the Warriors. That's what makes these seemingly meaningless games, I think, Clay, a little bit more meaningful than we might have thought going into this stretch.
So you mentioned this last stretch of the season, and I will say I think the one seed is vital because in my mind, Brooklyn's winning that play-in game, and they're going to be the 7. And so I want nothing to do. And the positive there is if you then get the 1, you're not going to see Brooklyn at all until the Eastern Conference Finals.
Correct.
If you get there and they get there. So like the way this play-in thing is going to work out, it could either be great or it could be horrendous. And so there's no middle ground there. Like you have to find a way to, so I'm going to play the odds here that Brooklyn's going to find a way to get that 7. You want to be the 1. So you look at this closing stretch and Ira, I mean, maybe there's a silver lining in this that because you're going to have to find a way to get those guys the confidence that they can do this together, that maybe that malaise that you were talking about in the crossover where maybe they've lost interest a little bit, maybe they've got to find themselves again. And maybe that's where the interest comes from. And maybe it's twofold. Maybe you find a way to get back to that professional disposition to where you don't have a game like you did Monday night. And all the while you're figuring out who you are and maybe who's going to be your closer down the stretch of games. And it all starts tonight. We're going to set the stage with the rest of the schedule for the rest of the week. This has to be one of those professional disposition games. This has to be one of those games where you go out there, you take care of business immediately. You don't let Golden State. because like you don't want, and we'll see how the injury report shakes out. Jimmy Butler, what is he playing tonight?
I think he's playing because he was a late addition to the injury report, listed as questionable, but I think he needs to play. I think after last game and what the Heat did, they want to get everyone back. They don't want a losing streak. So yeah, I think he will play. He was out at the Miami Open yesterday selling Bigger Face coffee, so he's good there. So yeah, I think he would, or else it would seem kind of incongruous if he's not going to play.
And you definitely do not want him playing late in the fourth quarter against a Golden State Warriors team that is depleted if you don't have to.
Right. Because you want to get him in. You want to take care of business. You want to get done. Same thing against the Knicks on Friday. The Knicks are done. After that loss last night, they're toast. And even watching the game, like to see someone like Taj Gibson playing late, like Tibbs, play the young guys. It's over. We don't need to see what Taj Gibson has in the tank. So I think the Knicks will come out the rest of the year with their younger players more, Miles McBride, players like that. That should be another game. And you know what, Clay? If you take care of tonight against the Warriors, you take care of Friday against the Knicks, if you want to rest players against Brooklyn, I'd have no issue with that.
Yeah, and look, get the 1 seed. And so if you're finding ways to steal rests along the way, that's fine. But look, and you know, I know these predictive sites mean nothing, but it does mean something sometimes. The 538 has the Heat finishing 2 games better than the rest of the Eastern Conference, even with the loss on Monday night. And they're going to have the tiebreaker. So things are still setting up nicely when you look at other teams' schedule. But I want to see 2 things. I want to see them get that 1 seed. And Ira, I need to see this team feeling good about itself and what their identity is going to become playoff time again. I think that's one
thing I want to add on the way out. And of these next 3 games, and certainly before we talk again next Wednesday on Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint, I want to see this, a Victor Oladipo game. I want you to talk to me next Wednesday and saying, Ira, that Oladipo performance against the Warriors or against the Knicks or against the Nets or against the Kings, that's the moment I want to see. So, Clay, between now and when I talk to you again next Wednesday, let's hope, and I think the Heat hope, to see the, quote, Victor Oladipo game.
It's been great, guys. Thanks so much for your questions, your comments. You guys drive this show. We appreciate it. We'll see you back right here next Wednesday on Inside the Paint.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.